Welcome back to part 2 of this soul-stirring conversation with Stephanie Kennedy. In our previous episode, we dove deep into her remarkable journey through adversity, sexual abuse, fertility struggles, pregnancy, infant loss, and new motherhood, exploring all the concepts of transformation in the face of life's most challenging moments. Today, we continue to dive deep into the spiritual growth and understanding that come from these profound experiences. So join us as we seek to offer solace and enlightenment to those who have walked similar paths. Get ready for another powerful and enlightening conversation with this amazing human being. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to make sure to give you a heads up that we are going to be discussing some topics that might be sensitive or triggering to some listeners. As humans, we all experience different events and emotions throughout our lives. Some of these experiences can be joyful and uplifting, while others can be more difficult and painful. Today's episode will touch on some of those more challenging experiences, including pregnancy and infant loss, sexual assault, and grief. If at any point during this episode you need to step away or take a break, please do so. It's important to prioritize your mental health, and we fully support that.
When you're so stripped down, to be held in a way that is nurturing and nourishing, when you can't ask for it and you don't even have the capacity to say no, and you just surrender, that word keeps coming up, and I feel like it's all part of any healing journey, really, is that surrendering into what is, surrendering into allowing support to be there.
Yeah, and how we'll fight that. We'll fight that, but then when you don't even have that, I think that's that radical receiving. If I had it, I'd use it, but I don't have it. So I'm now being held physically by someone that I have never been held by. And I am, like, when you said surrender, it's almost like handing yourself over into the arms of another person, whether it's physical or just even emotionally feeling their support, but then receiving what that feels like and wondering, why have I held this off for so, like, I needed this without this experience. Like, and I think that's an awareness that you only get in those moments. And you realize this whole time I could have, and I didn't need
the depths of connection that are possible.
possible.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, speaking just like, Carmen is one of my best people. And at the time, she was my realtor. And when all
She's
shit
not
hit
just
the
a realtor.
clearly, when shit hit the fan, when you were talking about you sent out an email, I did a Facebook post the day that we got home from the hospital, and I just like had to blast everybody. Here we go. Here's the story. This is out there. Everybody knows. And who showed up at my parents' house with a bouquet of flowers but Carmen, my realtor, who is now one of my best people, who walked that journey with me unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And allowed me to show myself in a way that I'd never shown myself before. And then the women that I was in circle with, like you and all the other beautiful women who held space for my processing. I really did dive into support, and I, whether it was circle or therapy or spending time at the beach writing in my journal with a piece of pie and tea. It was just finding the things that made me feel like, I felt like I had some form of control over my life. B, processing, feeling like I was healing in some way, and finding who I was again in a new way. Who is this woman? What does she desire? How does she want to show up in the world? What clothes does she want to wear? What color does her hair feel like she wants it to be? Down to every last piece of who I was.
And what you're speaking of is almost the last thing we would expect to find possible in such a destructive, inside out loss, that it's like, well, what else is this? And what that question just opened up hopefully shows this, how to get into that room.
Mm.
Because without and it's not making it positive, because none of it was positive. It was resonant as hell. Like
Mhm.
it's a bell that, it's not, it's all sorts of frequency. But when you ask that question, you start to see what that catalytic moment launched you into doing, being, and becoming
Mhm.
by staying connected to how you felt and honoring that in every moment.
Yeah.
And some of us don't do that. Some of us sort of lock things out, and there's a bit more of a stop start.
Sure.
Sometimes we take 10 years, 20 years. My mother and father did not speak of the loss of my brother for 30 years. 30 years, my mom. I meant to tie that in earlier about how she ended up in the maternity ward after she had David. She was actually asked to counsel someone else that had had a baby. Like, it was so messed up.
Oh my
It was,
goodness.
and so 30 years. So she did not have the luxury or the privilege that we are speaking of. And it's
Mm.
on the heels of that. It's like, it's in behind those warriors, those original women
Yeah.
that laid that path with their own pain, and they sacrificed so much of themselves, not even knowing they were being sacrificed, for someone to come along and say, oh, maybe we could do that better. Like, maybe we could have something a little more built in around this, because, oh yeah, the mental health of our patient is going downhill. But they didn't know anything about her mental health, because she was just told to go back and go try again. 1966, 1967. Yeah, no, it'll happen
Mm.
again. It does, and then that's that. And literally the family as well was like, they all huddled and said, okay, here's an idea. And some of these women had actually lost children, lost pregnancies as well. But their idea was, let's not talk about it. Because it's just a downer, or like, I just
Yeah.
still can't, and so they all pretended, and she was pressured to go to baby showers. It was just this
Oh,
whole, it was like, come on, let's just get on with it. Like, there was no one that stopped and said, hey, hang on. How do you feel? She didn't know how she felt for decades.
yeah. What do you need?
No.
And
So
then you
it
go on to
wasn't,
be a mom. You go on to have more children and try to raise babies when you are in the thick
and while
of.
that piece never gets tended to, that piece has some sort of like wall around it or prison around it that you've got to work around and never access, or tell yourself you can't, because everyone told you that in the most vulnerable of moments. Like the impressions made as a 20-year-old in the 60s for her. I
Yeah.
can't even imagine. She is such a warrior in my eyes. And I always want to make sure she knows that as a result of the things that she had to sacrifice, I am benefiting, and that this generation benefits,
Well,
and
I think,
that's sad and not okay. But like, there's something to say, like, it wasn't all wasted. And she's so envious of
no.
us. She's so envious
Oh,
that we're having this conversation in a
well,
way.
I feel honored on behalf of your mom, for another reason too, is because like my grandmother, my maternal grandmother had multiple miscarriages,
Mhm.
um, had 6 living children, and died of alcoholism. And my mom and I have discussed this frequently, that for a woman to experience multiple losses and births in, let's say, a 10 period, she'd had 6 live births and 2 miscarriages in 10 years without any support or coping mechanisms to work through any of the becoming a mom, the grieving, the any of it. And coming from a lineage of generational trauma and a lineage of alcoholism, to fall into that. And she died at 59 years old. And those, for me to sit here and be able to talk about this with you, makes me feel like I feel so honored, because generationally in my family, women who lose, or women gravitate towards easing their traumas and easing their pain with a substance. And I I have not, and I feel like I am here for her. I walk this journey for her, and I process this pain generationally for my lineage of women who've walked this journey, and I get to do it differently. I get to talk about it. I get to wear it and be proud of it. I get to do that. I have the privilege to do that.
So my grandmother passed in, like, she was 90 something, 93, I guess. And at her 90th birthday, we found out we were pregnant with our eldest, our first live baby, live birth. Sounds weird to say, but we didn't wait. We found it on the Friday. Her party was on the Saturday, and we have photos of us telling her.
Yeah.
And it's just this, like, this still photos of like, what? And then our heads throwing back and my parents were nervous, but I was like, no, I'm done trying to do this right. And she passed 3 years later, and she was just such an epic human. She was such a stoic, but loving and hilarious. And like, she was solid, and she was a warrior, and she had lost a couple of children as well. And with my mother's, experience as well. And like, to add to that a little bit, my mom didn't even get to go to the funeral. She wasn't allowed. She wasn't allowed to see him. Like, it was so messed up.
It really is.
Like, and
it's just re-traumatizing, really.
It is, but yet at the same time, you're gaslit, or she was gaslit to say that this is how it is, and that they were deciding. There was no consideration for her perspective at all. She didn't know she had permission to think or say or do or be. This is the piece that blows my mind. That isn't that long ago.
No, it's not.
The fact that she's made it to 75, 76, warrior energy. And then my dad's mom, again, and my mom's mom, I mean, they've all been through so much. They didn't have the luxury, they didn't have the privilege, they had to get on with it, and they did. They got what they got, right? But a year or so after my grandmother had passed, a friend of mine who I knew she had sort of psychic ability, but she just dropped into my DMs as they do sometimes, and kindly and, consently said, there's a woman here, and she is like, and she described her, and she said, listen, are you open to hearing this message? Because she will not leave me alone. And I was like, I'm just, so I appreciated the consent. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And we got on a quick call. And I'm sharing this for a reason, because what we're talking about, because I think it's really important. It was such a surreal message to receive. She slid into my Nana, essentially slid into my DMs to say, the work you're doing, everything you've done personally, everything you help others do, everything you're moving through, your willingness to move through, your feelings, your energy, your healing, your becoming, the things you lean into, the adversity, like everything you're doing is healing every man, woman, and child that came before you and that is coming after you, that is to come. You're doing that right now. Like, it was just that in between, this very present moment. You can see everything that came before, and she was like, every man, every one of us. And the reader, the friend, she was like losing it. She was just covered in goosebumps and tearful, because she's like, you don't understand. Like, she's helping, she was moving through my friend, and she said, I am so viscerally aware of what she's saying, and she could feel it, and I could too. But the reader was so thankful, because she said, I've never had this energy move through me this way. And so it was a gift to her as well, to let it pass through her, for her to receive it as well. But for me to receive that from this epic human in my life, that she was on a pedestal a bit, like, you bow down to this woman. She was a matriarch like no other. And for her to say that to me, that I was something special, that anything I dared to heal or look at in myself, that I had that power, that I was a vessel or a gateway to the past and the future, just my tiny little body in this earth. Just to even consider that, I mean, what does that do to somebody? Like, there's no language for it, but it changed me.
Well, it's like that undeniable vastness, the undeniable, the knowing that we think we're such a small piece in the cog of life, right? It's like we don't really, what is it that I can really do? Right?
Mhm.
I'm like one person. And that whole idea that there's one you ever, one you with your circumstances, with your lineage, with this whole equation happens once. Once. It's not a fucking mistake. And so that's what it makes me think of. It's like you're not just a grain of sand here. You have the ability to energetically heal generations. Like, fuck, that makes me feel so fucking powerful.
Yeah.
It
Like,
makes
it's
me
hard to
realize,
receive. Like, it was hard to
sure.
I was like, I don't know if I can receive that. Will it make me arrogant? Will it make me think I'm better than other people? Like, what will that? I don't know if I want this. Like,
Right.
will it make me feel pressure? What is going on? And I just quickly felt like, by the grace of the guides that work with me, were like, knock it off. They were just like, no, just shut up. They were like
Well, and
chipping
there's a
away at
part
it
of
so I
it.
could receive it. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, don't be weird about it. Let's not make it weird,
Yes.
just
Well, there's a
breathe.
part of it that feels like that whole thing of like, it's not about you.
Exactly. Just, yeah. Like, okay, here's what I got also is like, whatever, like whether you like it or not, Carrie Ann, it was like, this is the funny part. Oh, you can argue, you can, like, there's no room for modesty here. This isn't a compliment. Like, it was very funny. So I was like, look at me. I'm like, oh, like, as if I had control over receiving it, like I had choice. Like that, it was so hilarious. And I was like, oh, I feel so weird right now. Like, they were mocking me. Like I was almost being mocked. Like, and I loved that because it was like, this is true, whether you fucking like it or not, whether you believe it or not. We just thought we'd let you know
Yeah.
what else is going on here. And that's that what else piece. Just so you know
Mm.
what else you are, just so you know what else is happening.
I love that offering, by the way, the offering of just the language, because when we change language, we gain power. And that idea of transitioning the language to what else is here, it just feels like that curiosity piece.
Because all we do is take the surface story as 100% of the story. And
Yeah.
if we only take the surface story, we're missing out on the reason it showed up.
Mhm.
And I am so determined in myself and the things that I go through and the things that I witness other people and walk people through, and
Mhm.
with friends or clients. It's like,
That moment of, when you're talking about that, it makes me think of even just like this journey isn't like tied up in a knot nice and beautifully. It's like we I quit my job shortly after starting. I went back to school um in October. So like let's say I went back to work in April,
mhm,
beginning of May. I went back to school in October of the same year.
mhm,
I quit my job 6 months later. And in order for me to do that, my husband and I moved into our 600 square foot basement suite with 2 dogs.
mhm.
I quit my job. We got a tenant. Like it didn't look all beautiful. It wasn't all, yes, of course we've come a long way from there, but the sacrifices it took, and me standing in the knowing of like, this is what I have to do. And I understand that this is going to affect your life too. And I need you to be on board. And he always stepped in with me. And I don't know how I was fortunate enough for him to just be like, yep.
I don't think relationships like that are by accident. They're just
Oh,
not. They're just not. You you go through what you go through. You pick who you pick before them, and then by the grace of the choices we make, and yeah, we all have our own unique, like, relationship is a home to heal in, and
oh,
you and I have been very lucky with who we chose and chose us.
so fortunate.
And like,
And there's no mistake in that I say this, he is my arena for
mhm,
healing. He is my arena for all of my shit to come up and be seen and felt and mucked with. And this was no exception to that. It's just, for everyone listening to understand that, like, yes, the evolution of it, and did it get me to a different life and a beautiful life? 1000%. And it was gritty and dirty and hard all the way through. And it was so fucking worth it.
So what you're saying is, what I'm hearing you say, and what I think does not want to be stepped over, is that no matter if it's like a soul dropping in through a tiny being that is here for a very short time, whether it's in us or outside of us, or the people we pick, that we're in relationship with everything,
Mm,
and that each one, what I think we're also talking about here is highlighting that
mm.
your relationship with Deacon's intention, he may have had his own intention as well, that was completely his,
Yeah.
A friend of mine, out of nowhere, we were drinking wine one night, and I sound like I'm surrounded by those psychics, but it was a woman I met during coach training, and I knew she was psychic, but I was not bold to be like she invited me over, and I wasn't going to be like, do me, like, even though I totally kind of wanted to. But we were just sitting around and having a glass of wine, and she lifted her head, and we'd only known each other like 9 months, maybe a year. And she's like, "Who's David?" And I was
And
just,
you're like, pardon?
I was so excited. And I was like, "Tell me more." Like creepo. Like I was like, "What? Tell me more." And she was like, "He wants to talk to you. He wants, yeah, she's like, "Is he your brother?" I knew your brother died. And I said, "He didn't. Like, I have an alive brother." She knew nothing about him. And I said, "Yes." And I said, "Can I record it?" And I recorded it. And so we sat down, and I was like, this is so cool, because I established a relationship with him. I think it was when one of my grandfathers died, that I was very close to. And I felt really compelled, after reading like some James von Prague book, I'm really dating myself there, about like that I could open up a relationship. And I remember feeling a brotherly relationship in that evening, where I was lying in my bed. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. And I was like, "Oh my God, I can feel like I have a brother in ways that I didn't even feel with my alive brother." Like, it was weird, not to say anything about my brother Gary, sorry, but like, it was just a feeling of like what I would think. Anyway, it was like an after school special feeling of like what a brother would feel like.
Yeah.
And anyway, that opened me up. So I was just so intrigued, because I didn't have the loss that my mother would have. So I was like, "Oh my God, he wants to talk to," like, I felt so special. And so she opened it up, and I'm offering this because of what I just said about his agenda, their agenda, like, what if, okay? And she said, he sees the color. He's very excited. And she talked about how he was like this really like next level vibration, which obviously made me feel very special, because, humans love that shit of like hierarchy.
Yes.
Oh, he's very special. He's angelic. Oh, look at me. I'm related to an angel. Like, but it was super weird. But I was there for it. I'm there for these conversations. And she goes, he saw the color. And she's like, that's what he wanted. She's like, he came to see color. He had an opportunity given to him. And your parents partnered with him and said that they would help. And they gave him this gift. That was all he was meant to do. It was a gift for him. He wanted to see color, and he saw the color. And because he died in that very, in those final moments
Right.
of her pregnancy. And this just blew my mind, that he was saying, I saw the color, and mom, dad, or my parents, he kind of referred to them more like they were my parents, not his. And he was like, I was never meant. So the words he said was, I was never meant to walk the earth with you, but I'm with you always. And the privilege that your mom and dad gave me as a member of your family. And he never said our, which I thought was very interesting, but he was like, thank you, make sure they know that they gave me this, and it was perfect. Like, what a thing to, I was given permission. He said, you can say this to them. They actually need to hear this, and they need to have a conversation about me, because the experience that your mother had about me is so different than what I got. She got a very different end of the stick. She got a very different, and the guilt and feeling of responsibility and the burden that she carried as a result was it was never like the intention, even though there was an understanding that that would happen. It has just gone on longer than it needed to. And he was
Right.
trying to catalyze on a second level 30, 40 years later. Please not try and knock her out of it. Try and like let her see another perspective, like the what else. And so I was able to go and talk to my parents about this. And he gave other very interesting information. He was saying he was like the right hand of God, and that he was a writer, and he wrote while he was there, and he was my words. And he said, oh, he told me that he wasn't just visiting me, he was with me all the time. So like apparently he's right here. And he said, I'm your words, I'm your rhyme, I'm your, like, he was like, and I have like I love rhyming shit.
Yes,
and
totally.
alliteration, and I like words and stuff. And he was trying to take credit for it, which I thought was very funny. But I was like, hey, so it was really wonderful. But and then to offer that to my parents and sitting with them, and I offered this perspective, and very compassionately, very gingerly, really, to say, listen, I don't know if you're open. I asked consent. And she was like, yeah, okay, I'll listen. And she was very like, I could almost feel not how dare you. She wasn't mad, but she was like, I don't know what to do with this. She was very closed off. But part of the message I was to give was to my father as well, to say, listen, you're not giving her enough space to feel the fullness of that experience, to just let her feel. You close it off, you cut her off, you don't let her feel the fullness. It's almost like being carried on a wave to shore. Let her belly land on the sand and just hold her. Like, don't worry about it. Like, please offer her this. But my dad was there, and he totally got it, which was so cool, because my dad wasn't really, he always left those conversations to me. And my mom was like, I'm going to leave you. They weren't like girly conversations. My mom and I would like spiritual conversations about ghosts and shit. So he would be like, I'm out. You weirdos, I'm going to talk to you later. But he leaned in and he said, do you hear this? Do you hear what he's saying? We were chosen. Like he understood the assignment. And he was right in there under, he said, like, how lucky are we? Like, and again, not to bypass or gaslight, but he understood the visceral divinity of the message to say. And again, I don't think David was saying, do this to like gaslight her feelings, but he understood. It was almost like he was underneath it, like an excavator, like a holy, he was in the foundation of it to say, listen, this is the foundation that wants us to move through this. That this is what we'll be left with on the other side of you processing all the emotion you've trapped. And so I love that he understood that, because that's how I received it. I was like, this is the foundation he wants them to move through this with, to give my mom the full permission.
Yeah, you're speaking to something too that I think for anyone to access is that the idea that there are soul contracts, and that we have a contract with these babies. Like we've predetermined contracts that have taken place. And if you're willing to dive into and experiment, and that was part of my journey too, is stepping into that space of understanding in an ethereal way how our souls are connected to one another, what our souls need from each other, why we're connected in this life, what potentially the gifts are of the offering from those souls, like understanding even past life connections. And with Deacon, that was so imperative for me to start to put the pieces together of understanding that he was coming in this life for a purpose. He was coming to like stop me in my track. I was on the wrong path. And so he needed to stop my path and redirect me in a different direction. There was so much idea behind the fact that he was never supposed to come in, that spirit was never supposed to come in a male body, and that male body would formed, and that was never meant to be that way. That he had been my child for lifetimes. We are intimately connected on a soul level. All of these pieces of humanity, spirituality, soul connections, yes, the practicalities of life, but it's such a multifaceted experience if you allow it to be that. If you give yourself the grace of exploration, give yourself the grace of curiosity of, I wonder what this practitioner could provide me. I wonder what this practitioner could provide me. Be curious about all the weird shit. Like,
I wonder what it might be like to go smash a plate at the beach. Like, I wonder what it would be
yes.
like to go to a rage room and just really let myself feel this, this awful weight that I carry around, this pit in my stomach, like to just, I want to say play, but like,
Yeah.
there's no better word for it. I know it sounds very positive, but it's like that we get what we get. And it's reminding me that about like, are we spirits having human or humans having a spirit? And it's like, I definitely believe we're spirits having a human experience. That's why I want to talk about this on this. I want to talk about human as fuck, because it's like making peace with the package that we slipped into to better understand the facets, moving pieces, the heartbreak that, and not to just positivity, like, what am I trying to say? Not to be toxically positive. It's just like to see the potential and the possibilities, not positivity. And to just break open that a little bit, to just be like, listen, it's not black or white, it's not good or bad, it's about experience, all the moving pieces, and it's like to play with form, to play with grief, to play with loss. Sounds so twisted. It sounds so twisted. But when I received that message from David, it opened up an entirely new perspective that that's not true. I had considered it, because it was just wonderful to be able to have it validated or deepened through his voice or through his message.
Yes.
The first time I received this awareness that perhaps this loss, this miscarriage, this pregnancy loss, was something more than just to devastate me, than to just ruin me. The first hints were from that same friend, actually. She reached out and said, oh, I had this weird thing happen with a ladybug, which I thought was a bit like eye rolly. And I was like, oh, I'm a bit embarrassed, but I felt like it was something, like I said, I can't explain it, but I felt like it was significant. I see ladybugs all the time, but this one was different. It had flown. I had a really magical weekend with coach training. I'd really broken through this like new vocation that I was like clearly meant to do. And I was feeling weird about that too. Like, how do I even say, like, to receive that, And I was driving with a friend afterwards, and we were just like downloading. Oh my God, that was such great. And we were like all riffing off of like what a great weekend it was. And her sunroof was open, and a ladybug landed on my shoulder while we were driving. The trajectory of like how it did that on the Granville Street Bridge in Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, how it slid into her sunroof, landed on my shoulder, and sat there for 40 minutes. The entire ride, we were laughing the whole way, going, what is going on? This is weird. I was able to get out of her car, get into my car, because she had to drop me off at this park and ride place. And I sat there going, okay, like, what are you doing here? Like, right. And I opened up my sunroof, and I just thought, well, I just want to give it a moment, but it had stuck with me for 40 minutes. And I was just so aware, like, this is weird. So it was one of those moments. And I think I reached out to her, and she said, oh, it's a little girl, like an infant. She didn't even know about my miscarriage. And she was like, did you lose a baby? And I was like, like, and the fact that she said a girl,
right.
I always felt it was, but it felt crazy to think that. And I just lost it. She said, get home and call me back, because there's more coming through. And she said, yeah, she's your joy. She wanted me to know she was my joy, and she needed to clear the way for my joy to come through. And what an absolutely counterintuitive idea that would be to consider, and to even have it. And I understood it at the same time, because it had cleared away so much emotion and energy that I had trapped for a million other things that were not able to be named when I released them, like in the noises you were making, right?
Yes.
You don't even know what you're releasing. And thank God for the primal taking over, because it needed something. The catalyst needed to be so big to open the garage door open so wide for all of the stuff that you could not name. It's like the internet and the internet, like, go read the internet, and it's like, you can't. So it's like, we need the opening for all of that energy to move, for you not even to be able to name it, to clear the way for joy, which is our natural state, to even have a chance of showing up on the surface ever again.
Yes.
And that perspective I could feel when I was weeping the whole time, but And that doesn't mean it was sad. It was like, that's what happens when you receive information that validates or rings a bell so loud in you. It reverberates and makes us cry. Our bodies only have a few options. We're either going to shit, we're going to piss, we're going to cry. And so guess what? Be thankful for the crying.
King's cleaner. It really is.
You could be excreting so many other things. I think that is one of the funniest things I think I've ever heard myself say. Here's Spirit's like, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
He's not crying was bad. For some vomit, some shit, some piss. Let's just do it.
Make your choice.
Sometimes that has happened, but like the point is, I received it and then I fell asleep. Now I fell asleep and I rested, and she's because I said I was ready with questions, and I said, how can I access this relationship? And she said, just close your eyes and breathe and ask me to show up. And so I got weird with it. And as soon as I hung up the phone, I laid on my bed and I breathed. And I said, I'm open. I said, I'm open to receiving whatever information, like what you want me to know right now. And I just let myself rest. And I let go of needing to get anything because I felt strange asking. It felt really weird and kind of stupid. And essentially, I just assumed I'll probably fall asleep and it'll be a nice nap and that. And I drifted into what felt like this really strange trance-like place where all of a sudden I saw this movie in my head. Now I know I do psychic intuitive coaching and I'm like real honed in with it right now, like at this stage of the game. This was 2008, 2009. Okay, so that's this timeline of what I'm talking about. I was nowhere near what I do now. So I was like, what is this? Like, I was not asleep. So I was put in almost like a seat of a cinema where I could have the privilege to say, what is this? Like, what is going on? But not reactive. It was very calm. And this movie began to play. And it was this short film of this woman, and she was carrying these like 1970s crystal goblets, like, you know, the kind that are like chiseled, like prisms, they're heavy as hell. And they were just, I could feel the weight of them too. And she had her arms full and she was walking and they were super, super heavy. And she was so earnest. I could feel her heart. I could feel her intention, and she didn't want any of them to drop. And the next scene, all I see is them drop. And it's like, no, like you can just feel that. No, smash. And it's glass everywhere. And I'm looking at the glass and I'm horrified for her. I can feel it in my gut. And I'm just watching them. And I look, and all of a sudden it goes from being the most horrific, I'm so sad, this is awful, into, oh, this is quite pretty. Like looking at the pile, the light started to hit it. And then I became mesmerized by what looked like diamonds. And then I was like drawn into it. And I was like, what is this? Like, what is happening? And then all of a sudden, the clear glass started being colored like purples and blues and greens. And it just started turning into like what almost looked like stained glass. And then I was, what is going on? And I heard, so again, this is the feeling of a question. I'm not actually asking it before I even finish asking it. A voice, very clear, impressed upon me like a tattoo. You know, you put the tattoos on and you peel them off, and all of a sudden there's a full picture. And the message was, a mosaic is being made that has far more meaning than the glass's original intent. Those were not my words. Every time I say them, they're just poetry. It's probably David. Well, it was her, I guess. Like, that's what it was. Like, I remember being like,
can you say it again?
A mosaic is being made that has far more meaning than the glass's original intent. And do you feel, when I say that story, I want anyone listening, what resonates about it? Because I have moved through that story a million different ways. I have related to the woman being so earnest, trying to make shit work, trying to carry it without making a mess. I have been the glasses that have been dropped, and I have been a mess on the floor.
Yeah.
And I have been the part that have changed from one color into another, not knowing what's going on. And I have been the stained glass or the mosaic that now understands that it was all for something that was more than I ever could have anticipated or imagined than when I was the woman carrying her, like from the before.
Mm-hmm.
And all of it. And that we're changed here.
Yeah. It's as if the way that I have always seen it is that there is a crumbling that happens. It's like the shattering of the glasses. You as a person crumble into nothingness. And the rebuild happens with all of the pieces, and they go back in different places. The puzzle, some pieces don't fit anymore. Some are found, some are new, some are borrowed, some are, I don't know, they come from wherever. You know, I think of it like you smashed the glasses, but maybe there was little pieces of something already there on the ground that you didn't know belonged yet.
Yeah, like other stuff got scooped up into
Yes.
the mosaic and it's like there's an out of your handsness that I'm so aware of too. Like that gave me permission at times when I reflected back onto it. Like I really appreciated her. If that's what was going on, I remember being like, what just like I woke up and I couldn't believe that had just happened. Like that whole movie. And it was so poignant, perfect, short, sweet. It still walks with me to this day. And now I still get to share it. And like, now it's being walked with maybe others that have just received that and they might reflect on it. But like, it's such an all-encompassing example of what we're doing here and to make peace with the process. At the end of that vision, I had to say it was a dream on Facebook because I think I was like, I just had a dream. Like that'll be palpable. People don't call the white coats. But at the end, well, yeah, this is what we have to do. Like how ridiculous, but not anymore.
Not
Or
anymore,
a few years later, we can talk about whatever we want. But I remember being like, at the end of it, I heard bless the mess and trust the process, very clear. And that's where that came from. I remember putting those two pieces together and people being like, wow, you know, like that really lands or something. And I was like, thanks. I wish I could take credit for it. And as a deliverer, I will, but it was not my words. And then I heard All of Me, the song by John Legend, played me out. So then I was told to go listen to those lyrics, which I do. And so it's like the whole experience, much like how you're describing, clears the deck to only open up an awareness from a much deeper place, maybe a clearer place. But as a result of having gone through or leaned into all the adversity or all the challenge and letting yourself essentially be stripped bare. But who does, like, gosh, you know, like there's no right or wrong way to do it. But I guess I feel like we are standing side by side here, maybe to be an example of what's possible or what can arise from it, whether you straight out of the gate get it and like dive in like ready to rip your skin off, like, oh my God, like why would anybody want to do that? But like, sorry, but we have this mentality like go big or go home. Some of it's woven into our society, right? So I tend to go there anyway, but that isn't the way. That isn't the only way. And to like, just to be providing some spectrum here that this is possible, I think really helps.
Yeah. And I think too, just knowing that, like, and I know you're open to this, I'm sure as well, but like that the journey does look different for everyone. It's not a cookie cutter experience. And there is reach out for help, ask for another woman to hold your hand and walk beside you. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to, you know what, if your best people aren't showing up for you, then you find me. You find Carrie Ann. Like, you just keep looking until you find the woman who's going to hold you.
We're
And
out there. Like, that's the thing. I want to say fight for it. Fight for it. Because if you are in the wrong room, go find the room. I know where they are. You know, the Radical Acceptance Facebook group. my God, that was all opened up to empaths. I mean, you've never met a group of more like open, receiving. They're the women that come to my retreats. They're the women that sit in circle, like how you and I met.
Mm-hmm.
And like, go fight for it. You go find us.
Go find those
find
women.
them.
Yes.
It is.
Don't do this alone.
No. And they get it, to find women who get it and know how to give it. This is the stuff. This is where we need to meet.
It's the assignment.
Some of us are really like, especially, but guess what? A lot of us are anointed through these experiences and happy. I am happy to have had that experience, if that's what it means to be a better human for another person and to create a connection that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Hell yes. I walk this planet with other women because of the journeys that I've walked through grief and pain and shame. And now I can hold someone in a container of anything. Nothing affects me. Nothing shocks me. There's nothing you could say that would make me not want to love you and hold space for you. That's why I'm here.
And that's the gift of these, Elizabeth Lesser has a beautiful book called Broken Open. And I think this is a great title for this episode. Because the things that break us open change us in ways that we don't anticipate or can even language until we can. And it's not even to make sense of it, but it's like, there's a level of like, oh, that makes sense now. And how that comes with time. Like being forged like steel, I'm thinking like steel magnolias, but the heat that's applied for that to change form and to, but it's strong as, and women are made of it. We're made it, like we're made of steel. We really are.
It makes me think of kintsugi, that I think that's the right term, that putting back together the gold, the forging like of a metal to hold you back together again. And it's, do we have scars? Hell yeah. Does our bodies look different? Hell yeah.
Yeah, but there's a story there. And that it's like I'm seeing the solder, that solder in between the pieces. And you were talking about the plates. Oh my God, full circle jerks. Sorry, I just said circle jerks. Okay, I didn't mean to say that. Sometimes I call whatever I work with a jerk because I'm like, you jerks. Like they're like, do you like that? Whether it's my brother or not, like it definitely feels like it. The point is, you were talking about the plates that were shifting and like, look at that closed circle. I love a closed loop. My intuition's like, we know, whatever that is. Anyway, but the soldering in between feels like that sisterhood that is longed for and needed. And this, it's in these conversations that is that gold that connects those plates now. Like, think about that. Before, without the cracking, without that severance, we never would have known the gift of sisterhood without that gold in between fusing it back together. And so what if that's also the reason or a purpose that only wants to give more, that nothing in a way is ever taken?
It's only gained.
Like imagine, like just even be able to breathe that into the spaces. What if that's here too? Because it is.
Undeniably.
Close a conversation like this other than, will you come back?
I would be honored. I would be so honored. I adore you so much. And I'm so grateful for these conversations and for you holding the container to have them. And I just adore you.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
I love that you're in the world. I love that you're arm in arming it with other women through these dramas and traumas and tribulations to realize that there's so much more than the experiences that happen to them.
Yes.
And that they're more as a result of, and you help fuse that together, that you and I are helping do that. We need more of this. So, and the role and thank you, Deacon.
Yes. Thank you, Deacon, for showing up for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my girl and my mom's son, David, my brother, and my Nana, and like all the women that came before,
Yes.
the women that came before you. And I just feel like they were all here.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Wow.
Wow.
What is going on? What is this? What have I done? What have I started? Oh, thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you so
of these
much for having
conversations.
me. It means so much to me. And yeah, you let me know. I'm happy to chat anytime.
Oh my gosh. So in closing, Stephanie, where can people reach out, find you? Mhm.
Yeah, my website is kennedywithlove.com. And then on social media, I only have Instagram and Facebook because I haven't dived into the TikTok world.
It's plenty what you've got going.
And
And
it's
oh my
Kennedy with
gosh.
Love.
And I mean, can we just give people a little touchdown about what's here today?
In my life.
Yes. Like
I have a 19-month-old at home. It took us 11 years total for this little firecracker to arrive. Yeah, I have a 19-month-old at home. She is wind and fire and earth and air. She is
she's
literally,
deluxe.
oh yes, she is
Her name is Lux. I'm playing with
she's
it.
light. Yeah, she is full of light and piss and vinegar, and she
Yeah,
is
she's your
joy
friend.
she is joy amplified and incarnate on this planet. She is freaking incredible. Yeah, I have a live human here taking care of, navigating being a mom. So I'm sure we
And
could talk
Deacon in
about that
between you. Like I absolutely see how woven into this whole thing he is, and he makes himself known along the way.
often.
Continues to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have more to talk about because we've
Do we
all
ever?
heard the WTF experiences of this stuff of like, what? Is this real life?
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Thank you for being here with us. If you're looking for support and community to connect with other women who've experienced this pregnancy loss, any of the things that we've spoken about, we really went to the center of the earth today. Please join us in the Radical Acceptance group on Facebook. Join the discussion, ask any questions, share any insights or thoughts to make sure that you're supported. I always believe in aftercare. These conversations are going to open up a lot, and I want you to know there's a place to go. There's a place to go to unpack some of this stuff, whether it's in that online community that is free and accessible, or working with somebody like Stephanie or myself to make sure that you get what you need and you have a safe place to unpack and to travel this road as human as effingly possible, because this is the experience we're here to have. So thank you, Stephanie, so much for showing up and bringing all of yourself, your huge heart, and your full story, and just your experiences and everything that you're here to be and do on the planet. I'm so grateful.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you in the group.
I'll see you soon.
Love you so much.